It's time to talk about our Orlando Magic. They big steps forward last season, but can they do it again? Michael Bolton, I'm waiting for your rendition of the song.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed. That's not the song, though. That's not the song.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. And I'm currently wearing Anastasia Beverly Hills. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Every day in the summer, FanDuel is giving you something, a boost or a bonus for all customers every day, all through the summer. Go to FanDuel.com right now to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we are available on all platforms. So give us a thumb up, give us a comment, leave those comments, of course, subscribe, follow, audio, video, double bang, 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 bang. You know all about that. We're talking Orlando Magic. Let's talk it. So here he is. He's back on the show. He's one of the OGs of the Locked On Podcast Network. Been here on this show so many times. Is it true, Philip Rossman-Reich, that you have an unreleased version of the Orlando Magic song that you're going to debut here right on the show for us? You're gonna put it out there?
I don't have that. The version of it that I have is on cassette.
Oh, no way.
I haven't quite figured out how to get that to a format that we can use. I have the original Orlando Magic theme song on cassette. That includes the version with the lyrics and then a purely karaoke instrumental version. So I know the words to it and can sing karaoke if need be.
I'll count you in. Dun, 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 dun. I think that song. The fact that you've got a karaoke, I'm mind blown. I need to work out what we can do with this because that's just absolutely amazing. We'll talk about this later on because that's just ridiculously great information. But we're here to actually talk about a team that was, let's say, ridiculously great considering where we've been in the last few years, Phil. The Magic took big steps forward last season. Even the last week of the year, they were in a spot to maybe push to a 2 seed, a 3 seed. That didn't obviously come to fruition. They had a very, very ugly but hard-fought series against the Cavs. And now, I guess, would you say expectations are raised? I wouldn't say they're sky high, but they definitely have to be raised heading into this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think they showed us what's possible last year, and like you said, they were sitting in the 2 seed or the 3 seed heading into the last week of the season before the schedule got very tough. They maybe ran out a little bit of steam and felt a little bit of the pressure of trying to clinch that playoff spot. But expectations are now they're in the playoffs, not play in, not anything else. They need to be a playoff team, and judging at least by what everyone said the day after Game 7 against the Cavs, they expect to have home court advantage. They expect to be fighting for a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. So very clearly, things that might have been acceptable last year are no longer acceptable. They want to be in the playoffs again. They want to win a series this year.
It's the thing with that is it's very easy to see how it happens, right? We see these young guys driving things year 3 for Paolo, year 4 for Franz. We see moves they made in free agency. If you guys watching this on video, you can see they bring in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, one of the bigger free agent signings in the market. They draft Tristan da Silva. They, for some reason, signed Corey Joseph. No idea what was going on with that one. But the big one there is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope because he was one of the bigger names that was around. The Magic were they had the cap space. They whispered around some other names. There was the occasional Paul George talk, but you're getting someone like KCP. And one thing we've always talked about, Phil, with this team is, hey, who's going to shoot? Like, who's going to do the shooting? Because no one here can shoot. And they basically said, let's get Gary Harris, but just make it way better. And that's what they've done.
And then keep Gary Harris.
Oh, which was amazing as well. It's like, let's upgrade him and let Gary just be in the shadow, like a drop shadow behind Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, just doing his little bits in the role that suits him perfectly. And when we did this show last year, we were like, hey, there's like 5 point guards here. What's going to go on with this team? And they've sort of figured out who's playing what position, the guys in the right spots. It just seems to make more sense. And after the success of last season, like this addition of KCP, like I don't think it could be not perfect, but the fit makes a lot of sense. I'll start on a downer though, like what could go wrong with the KCP sign? Like how could this not work out, do you think?
Yeah, I think the way it would not work out is that the Magic need a point guard. Like if you look at their starting lineup, at least, Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Paolo, Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter, they don't have a kind of natural point guard. And that some of that is by design, like the way the Magic are kind of built is, Paolo and Franz are going to be on the ball a lot. And I think one of the main goals for the Magic this offseason was they didn't want to bring in someone who could kind of get in the way of their development or would kind of take the ball out of their hands too much. But when you look at how they played in the playoffs, and I know that doesn't necessarily help in the fantasy perspective, but when you look at how they played in the playoffs, they were clearly missing someone who could kind of ease that playmaking burden from Paolo. Paolo Banchero, I think, led the team in assists last year. He was the youngest player, I think, in a while that's led his team in points, rebounds, and assists in the same season. The Magic didn't really relieve that pressure off of Paolo. He's still going to have to do a lot of the playmaking. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And again, some of that is by design. But Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is not someone who's going to create his own shot. He's coming from a Denver team that didn't take a lot of threes. Orlando was took the second fewest threes in the league. And so if there is a concern about adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, it's that, yes, his shooting is going to greatly improve the Magic, but he took only 4, maybe 5 3-point attempts per game last year. He doesn't actually increase their volume of shots, and it's still on the Magic to get him those same looks. And obviously, Paolo Banchero is a very good passer for someone who's 6'10". He's not Nikola Jokic. And so I think there is a little bit of a concern that KCP does add something to this team. I'm not sitting here saying he doesn't, but does he add enough to this team to take them from plucky 5 seed to, this is a true Eastern Conference contender? And I think that is going to fall more on Jalen Suggs developing into more of a point guard than anything else. And that's, I think, a huge question mark.
The Suggs thing, we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but when you look at KCP's numbers, I think most people would be pretty surprised to see that his usage was under 13%. Like, that's really, really low. Like you said, he didn't take that many threes. Like, he hit 40%, but he made 1.6 of them. Like, he realistically, you should be like 2.8, 2.9, the sort of volume that someone like a Gary Trent would do back in Toronto. Like, that's just taking a lot of threes, playing those 33 minutes, but he doesn't take any shots. And it is,
some of that's Denver. Like,
of course,
the Denver Nuggets took the fewest threes in the league last year. Orlando was second fewest. So, yes, I think you're right. In a normal offense, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope would take 6, 7, maybe 8 threes a game and be hitting 2 or 3 of them at least. If he's around 4 again, then you wonder, like, how much of an impact is he making offensively?
I think he will have to take more because you can look at the comparisons there, and you got Paolo and Franz, and there's Jamal Murray, but there's Michael Porter on that team. There's Nikola Jokic, and Wendell Carter's not taking that many shots. Jalen Suggs isn't doing what Jamal Murray did, so that the shot distribution is going to be quite different. So, like, even if he's not going to be a 23 usage guy, but 17, 18, you get those threes up to 7 a game and hit 2.2, 2.3, whatever it is. Like, that does make a difference. The other worry is like all of us, Phil, he's getting older, but he's pushing past that prime area, and maybe there is a fall off in shooting at some point, and maybe that lower usage enabled him to be as accurate as he was on those 3-point shots. But honestly, like, again, we talk about like a perfect fit of what they need. Theoretically, it's there. I'm excited to see what he does. There's no one that's giving real competition for his minutes, although who knows what they do with some other positions. But KCP is there, and it is one of the bigger free agent signings for the Magic in recent times, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely the biggest kind of like short-term move that they made in a while. I mean, I think Draymond Green put it really well on his podcast. Typically when the Magic have gone after free agents, it's been a 1-year, $15 million deal for Jeff Green, or that 4-year deal they gave to Channing Frye way back when. And like, you're bringing in some nice veterans, but you're also spending a lot of money on guys that aren't necessarily part of your future. You're spending because you have to hit the payroll floor. The Magic weren't doing that here. The Magic added a guy that they intend to start. They intend to be a big part of their team and is a champion. I'm a big proponent of what I call the Horace Grant theory, where you bring in a guy with championship experience that elevates everyone else on your team if he's one of your team leaders. And I think KCP, with the defense that he brings, especially, which is I really think the reason why the Magic fell in love with him, he is someone that's going to elevate this team and make them a little bit more serious and stay on task to elevate themselves in the standings.
Let's look at the guys that they lost. It's a list of players. Some of them were rotation guys, but it's not massive. There's Joe Ingles, Chuma Okeke's gone to the Knicks on a camp deal. Kevon Harris and Admiral Schofield were getting mop-up minutes for the last couple of years when the team wasn't quite as good. But the guy that you have highlighted as the biggest loss, and at the moment, we have no idea where this man is going to be playing because Markelle Fultz has not caught on anywhere. He's not signed a contract anywhere. What's going on with Markelle Fultz? Because I know there's a lot of injuries. The year before last, the 22-23 season, he was really quite good. Like he'd stepped up, his efficiency had improved, and he looked to be this really strong point guard that they were going to base their team around. Then I think game 1 or game 2, he had weird knee soreness before the game last season. We never heard any information. He didn't come back, and then he was in and out with his knee. He played 21 minutes a night. He never takes threes anymore. His free throws dropped off, his usage dropped down, and they just washed their hands completely of Fultz. So what happened? Is it just the knee?
I think it's just the knee. Maybe there's something else going on there too, but the way Markelle Fultz works is, his thoracic outlet syndrome never goes away. That is an injury that stays with you. You manage it, you figure out how to work around it, but it's with you forever. And so his shot became a little bit more about timing. And timing when the release was. A lot of fans, when they watched him shoot throughout the year, thought that they saw a hitch in his shot. And I was like, no, his release is the same. The difference is he's maybe not getting as much lift because his knee was really bothering him. Like you said, game 4 of the season, he exited with what was described as left knee tendonitis. No one ever said like, oh, it was something that was bothering him through training camp or whatnot, but it was clearly something that was bothering him and clearly affected his explosiveness, his ability to get off the floor when he took jumpers. And it can, for whatever reason, the newfound confidence that he kind of had in his jumper toward the end of the 2023 season completely went away. I believe he took only 14 3-pointers the entire season. It's one thing when you're doing that on a rebuilding team that wins and losses don't matter and you can give guys the space to kind of find themselves and figure it out. It's another thing when you're doing that on a team that expects to win. And the Magic kind of we hit a point where his contract was expiring. The Magic had to think about how are we going to get better and can Markelle Fultz make us better? And I think there's ways that he would still make them better, but they got to think about the playoffs too. And in the playoffs, Markelle Fultz, not that he was a liability because I thought he had a good series against Cleveland, but you have to limit how much you use him because teams are just going to say, go ahead and shoot it. If you make a 3, so what? Do it again. Like he's just not someone that's going to be able to do it. And he's got to get his body right, I think, before he can do anything else.
Yeah, it's very clear. I think that a lot of the Fultz stuff is confidence in his body, whether it is the shoulder, where it is the knee, and he had toe issues. Like if it's good, like he's good, and if it's not, then he really struggles. We're going to talk later on in the show about the man who is tasked with being that full-time replacement. Later on in the show, we'll get to that in a sec. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. We all know across the summer, well, there's just not as much going on, is there? Sports are shut down. Off seasons, there are a few things going on still. Major League Baseball, for one, is still rolling. But FanDuel wants to keep you in it. They want to keep you in the game. So every day, all through the summer, FanDuel's got something for you. Not just the new customers, not these blow-in bandwagon FanDuel legends. We're talking about the people who have been there the whole time. Like Phil, the OGs. Every day, a boost or a bonus into your FanDuel account. Every day, all summer long. So you can check out the futures. You can check out the odds for the Magic to win the Eastern Conference or maybe win the NBA title, for Paolo Banchero to be the MVP. You can check out all of the action every day for Major League Baseball because, of course, FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So head across to FanDuel.com right now and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, something. Go check it out. I forget what I'm going to say, but that's okay because we are all good. Don't forget to gamble responsibly. That's what I wanted to say. Phil, hopefully the rest of the show goes smoother than the end of that ad read as we talk about the Magic now. And what we want to talk about in this part of the show is their projected starting group, and it's like really straightforward. I think you've put it out there as Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr. And I can imagine the only spot that someone would have an argument with is they say, really, we're going back to Wendell Carter after they've re-signed Mo Wagner and Goga Badadze. We are going to talk Wendell a little bit more in the show, but there's no real way that this is anything they do differently. They tried Jonathan Isaac in the playoffs, but that didn't go particularly well as a starter. This is 99% chances what they roll out opening night.
Yeah, I don't see a way that's not the starting lineup that they have, obviously barring injury. But if they're healthy, that's their five. I mean, they know, obviously they have the massive investment that they made in Franz Wagner over the summer that kicks in next year. Paolo's an all-star. He'll get his max. Jalen Suggs is probably going to get his new contract done before the season starts as well. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's the guy you just signed to be your starting shooting guard. And, we'll talk more about Wendell later, but Wendell's still their best option at center when he's healthy. And so it's pretty straightforward. It got them to the playoffs last year. It got them the 5 seed. It got them to a game 7. There's no reason to turn away from it at this point.
We'll use this part here, I think, to talk a little bit about Paolo, because in fantasy circles there is discussions, a lot of discussions, because people go, well, man, the inefficiencies kills you. You can't draft him. And I go, for a start off, that's garbage. But people think that. Now, year 1 to year 2, there were big steps forward from Paolo, but it is still the same sort of shape. He gets a lot of points, rebounds, and assists. His defensive stats lack a little bit, and his efficiency is not there. We're heading into year 3, and this, to me, year 3 is the season where these absolutely elite players, they go from either quite good, showing a lot of potential, very good, to being dominating. And so that's it here. Like, we will see where he goes, but like, it just has to be efficiency for Paolo. Now, I guess the question could be that the general held consensus, Phil, is that if you reduce the load of what you do, you can be more efficient. The better players are able to become more efficient while they keep the same load or increase it. Are there signs of that with Paolo? Do you think that is coming? Were we seeing a slow increase in that last season?
Yeah, I think there are signs that it can happen, and you don't need to look much further than his playoff series. Like, if you look at his efficiency numbers in the playoffs, like, he upped his 3-point field goal percentage to 40%, and a lot of that was coming off of pull-ups and stuff that he's self-creating. He had 2 or 3 30-point games in that playoff series, so he showed that he can elevate his scoring with all the attention on him. I think it's important to note he was, I believe, by some metrics, in the top 10 for most doubled player in the league. Like, he gets a lot of attention when he has the ball in his hand. So to me, what I really look for in his efficiency is not necessarily his field goal percentage efficiency, because, he's going to be taking a lot of shots. I don't think the Magic did very much to ease that burden. A big thing that I called for throughout the offseason is get him a guy that can get him the ball in the dunker spot, run pick and rolls with him as the roll man instead of always on the ball. That's something he's had to learn how to do in the NBA, and obviously he's come a long way with that in 2 years. The big thing for him is going to be reducing turnovers, and I know that's important in some fantasy leagues, but he is still a relatively high turnover player. That was something that killed him in the playoffs against Cleveland as well. If he can continue to reduce his turnovers and improve as a playmaker and as a creator, that's going to up his assists, up his efficiency, get him more shot attempts, whether that improves his field goal percentage efficiency or not. But it'll get him more chances to score and accumulate those points that the Magic need. So much of the last 2 years for Orlando has been, let's just give Paolo this blank canvas, let him explore, figure out the edges of his game. This is going to be one of the places where he's going to have to start fine-tuning things, because you're right, the efficiency argument is the biggest argument that people have with Paolo Banchero, whether it's field goal percentage or turnovers or whatever. He's got to start kind of reeling that in and kind of finding his place. And I think the playoffs are going to help him a lot, but it's all on him because he's the guy. The ball is in his hands. The Magic's success depends on him and his growth.
Let's have a look at a projected bench group on this squad, Phil, because, again, this is a team that has beefed up their depth, and there are players that are missing from this group that I agree that they should be missing from this group, that people will be like, what's going on? We can start at the bottom because you've got Mo Wagner as a backup center, but they've re-signed Mo Wagner. They've re-signed Goga Bitadze, and there were times when Goga started last season when Wendell was out where he was really, really good. Defensively, he was strong, and Mo Wagner's awesome offensively with his efficiency, and they sort of complement each other. But like, that's just having you can't play both of them all the time. You talk about, Cole Anthony started up last season red hot, and then he was just like completely out of favor as the season went on. Their last two picks in the 10 to 20 range of the draft, Jet Howard and Tristan da Silva, I agree. I don't see how they get rotation minutes outside of an injury to someone. Now, a lot of people are incredibly hyped about what Tristan da Silva provides, and even people think he's going to be useful in fantasy this season. And my thing is, I'm not really sure what the minutes he's going to get behind Banchero, Wagner, and Isaac, but it's hard to find a role for all of these guys. And even like Anthony Black, who was the sixth pick last season and had to start some games, I thought he struggled immensely for most of the year, and I really do worry about that complete sort of lack of offense at this point. Yeah, he's there, but like maybe he doesn't even stick every single night in that rotation because there is so many other options. Now, it's a good spot to have, but there are going to be, like, the one I probably focus on the most here is Cole Anthony, who was a starting point guard at one point and then was like a candidate for sixth man of the year at the start of last season, and then was just sort of being phased out. Like, he's known as like a good sort of a teammate, a very sort of jovial guy, sort of the best post-game interviews in the NBA. But is there any sort of like concern with there's too much going on here and people getting a little bit like annoyed at their lack of roles?
So far, there isn't that kind of tension within the team. Like, you know, like last year for the Magic was just a vibe season.
Yep.
Like everybody loved each other. Everybody just loved winning for the first time. And I do, like, as someone who follows the Magic, not even from a fantasy perspective, I do worry a little bit about a problem of more issue for this Magic team. Is, okay, now you have expectations, now you have pressure, now you have Cole Anthony coming into his extension. Franz Wagner will come into his extension. You're gonna start feeling this pressure of, I want more for me, and it's not always about the team. And like, this is something every team deals with. You know, the problem of more is a Pat Riley coined phrase from the Showtime Lakers. It's going to be something tricky. In fact, like, some of the good vibes guys are gone now. Like, Markelle Fultz was a vibes guy. He's someone that was very big in that locker room. Chuma Okeke and Admiral Schofield were very big in that locker room. They're like kind of glue guys. Admiral Schofield was on a 2-way contract last year. Didn't spend a minute in the G League. He was always with the main roster, even though he didn't play. And so I think I don't think there are any chemistry issues. Everyone is still very much bought into what this group is doing. But the Magic are also trying to knock on the door of being a Eastern Conference contender, and that might require moving some guys and eventually trading some players. And so there could be a little bit of a tension on this team, especially as we get to the trade deadline and we start thinking about, how does this team get better? From the Cole Anthony perspective, he's kind of the one guy on this roster that doesn't fit the Magic's type. You know, the Magic love big, positionally versatile players. Cole Anthony is small. He is not a natural point guard. The Magic kind of always ran him with Markelle Fultz, even under Steve Clifford, so that he could play more off the ball and be a scorer as much as anything. And so, yeah, now you have a bigger Anthony Black, maybe that's able to defend some of those positions, but Cole Anthony is the one guy that doesn't fit the type. He had a really rough season last year. Overall, he was dealing with a little bit of a quad issue that he played through most of the season, like a quad bruise that may have slowed his shot down a little bit, but he's someone whose value is derived completely from his scoring. And look, this Magic team was the 4th highest scoring bench in the league last year. It's going to be another big factor in their success again this year, that they're able to get points off their bench. Cole Anthony's got to score to be successful, or he really loses value for this team.
Yeah, he does. And he started out well, and then he just sort of disappeared, and there are other options there. I guess you say that he doesn't fit their mold. The thing that I would put in Cole's favor is that, like, there's not that many guys that are as good at generating their own shot the way that he is. Like, there's the two big guys, as Franz and Paolo, but as their guards, the other guys don't do that. So he does have a different skill set, but we also saw them push away from that quickly on Tristan da Silva, because there'll be a lot of people who, man, this guy steal the draft. Look how well he shot in Summer League. Again, everyone needs to understand, I think, when anyone talks where they come from, when discussing players and prospects, is I was not very high on Tristan da Silva. I thought that there was nothing that really stood out to me as a player. He was an older guy who was solid enough, but nothing got me excited. And then, he has his Summer League, but so my initial thought is I still don't really buy it. He shot 60% from 3, which is, of course, not going to happen. And I don't get where the minutes are. Like, do you think there is a situation, like in the past when they've had some struggles, they've gone and played Franz down at the 2? Do you think that they'll do some of that to get Da Silva into the lineup? Or even like Jet Howard, who was bad last season, but showed stuff in Summer League too. Like, where do these guys, like, is there anything there, or is it just going to need like injuries for that to be something that happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is competition in training camp. I mean, I think there will be open competition in training camp. I forget exactly who I submitted on my reserve list, but Caleb Houston's still kind of hanging around in that backup 3 spot too. The Magic are going to be able to mix and match lineups and try and figure things out. But look, there are a lot of injury prone guys on this team. Jonathan Isaac should be healthier than he was last year. They should be open to playing him in back-to-backs more. But, are you going to count on Jonathan Isaac to play 60, 70 games next year still? Is that something you're going to do? So I think Tristan da Silva is both the Jonathan Isaac, break glass in case of emergency plan. But he's also, I think, someone who's going to compete for minutes at the starting 3 spot, or the backup 3 spot, as well. Jamal Mosley last year ran a 10-man rotation. Even in the playoffs, he was running a 10-man rotation. Even when everyone was screaming, you got to tighten the rotation up, coach. You can't have lineups without one of Paolo or Franz out on the floor. That was something that this team just really banked on. So I do suspect that no matter what, the Magic will have a 10-man rotation. Maybe Tristan da Silva spends some time in the G League. Maybe he gets some run there when he's not getting minutes with the main roster. But I think he and Jet Howard are going to be battling for one of those spots in the reserve group. And there's going to be moments where one of them plays, maybe the other one doesn't, or they switch until they kind of find the groove that they need to succeed.
We are going to get into talking about, as I just bring up the wrong part of the screen here, about some of these guys, including the big fella himself at point guard, Jaylen Suggs, because it was a really strong season from Suggs last year. We'll get into talking about him now, because when I do my fake awards ballot at the end of the season, I had Suggs, I think, first or second in most improved player, because I don't use the general consensus where people do it of, this guy was really good and became an all-star. I went from I looked at Jaylen Suggs was a top 5 pick bust who became an all defensive level player. And to me, that's a bloody gigantic improvement. And he transitioned to be the starting point guard halfway through the season, because he was the starting 2 guard to begin the season. And that's when we talk about their point guard, and that Suggs wasn't that. He didn't play for that position last season.
If I remember correctly, in our preview podcast last year, I think I put Gary Harris as the starting 2 guard, and you questioned me on that, and I said I think it's going to be an open competition, but I think Gary is just more solid at this point. Yeah,
I think that was more that I was interested. You put this high pick into Suggs, we just got to see what he can do, because I think the year before he started opening night, and he was in and out of the team, and he's also one of those weird players, Jaylen Suggs. You talk about vibes, I'm pretty sure if we look at his home road splits, there's insane differences. Didn't he shoot 40% versus 30% or something home versus it's something crazy.
It's something like that. It's something crazy like that.
I guess the main thing we talk about with Suggs is he only played 27 minutes a night. Now, some of that was because of the balls out effort that he puts out there, but also it's just the way, because Markel Fultz was there, because they were mix and matching Cole Anthony and Anthony Black into that position. And Suggs only averaged 12.6 points. He only averaged 2.7 assists as a starting point guard. Now that he is sort of locked in as the starting point guard, do you think we're going to get a slight uptick in usage, a bigger assist load, more minutes? Is he going to lock in 31, 32 minutes now as a starter?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he will flirt around 30 minutes per game, but I think we will see his role increase as well. I would note that, one of the reasons why Suggs struggled early on in his career was, he rebuilding team, go out there, go do your thing, young guy. We got to figure out what you are. And Suggs went wild. He was turning the ball over. He was shooting high 40s at the rim, which is really bad. The Magic, I think, did a really did some work to just kind of rein him in, to say hey, don't, we're trying to win now. This is Paolo's team. This is Franz's team. We don't need you to throw yourself headlong into the middle of the defense and try and throw something at the rim, which is what he did a lot during his rookie year. If you look at his drives on Second Spectrum, they were at 9 his rookie year. They were down to 5 his second year. I think they were at 3 or 4, somewhere, a little bit more than 4 per game last year. They really did a job, I think, telling him hey, we don't need, really kind of defining his offensive role and limiting what they were expecting from him offensively. And to Jaylen Suggs' credit, he accepted a lot of that, said, my focus is on defense, being a better catch and shoot 3-pointer, which he was really good at last year. Really taking some major steps there. It wouldn't surprise me if this year they loosen those reins a little bit and say, hey, we need you to drive a little bit more this year. We need you to create a little bit more this year. so that Paolo can get more, can get some more easier shots, or Franz can get some more easier shots. It wouldn't surprise me if Suggs is due for a bigger role and more of a playmaking role to kind of set up all the other players the Magic have. And, whether they keep at that or not is going to be dependent on how he looks in training camp, obviously. But I do suspect that Suggs is going to be on the ball a little bit more this year.
In terms of those rim numbers, I'm taking a look here. This is from dunks and threes. In his rookie year, it was 6.2 attempts at the rim per 75. Then it was down to 4.3. Then it was down to 3.7. And his percentage went from 53.5 up to 65.7 at the rim. So, you're right. Just more, just better decision making.
Be more careful. Yeah, be more careful.
Get there when you need to. Finish the ones that you need to, and then make the correct decision, which is what a point guard needs to do. So these are all really encouraging signs. And then the next step then becomes, okay, well, make sure there are better opportunities with your athletic advantages. You take the ones that are good, but you've got to start to create ones that are good as well, get into those positions. And he will start to do that. I do think there is going to be a lot more from Jaylen Suggs this season. Again, it is the first season that he is installed as the full-time starting point guard, because that wasn't the case last season. In terms of a guy who sits with a little bit of a make or break year, Phil, we've referenced him a little bit already, but it is Wendell Carter Jr., who not only last season did he suffer another injury, and then he was replaced by Goga Bitadze as the starter, and they went on a bit of a run. But even before that and after that, his numbers just weren't where they had been in the past. There were some real struggles from Wendell. Now, he did get back into that starting lineup, but he only played 26 minutes a night. He shot 37% from three, but this is a guy, for some reason, I don't know what happened. Yes, I do, Jim Boylan, but a lot of his game changed, because early on in Chicago, he blocked a lot of shots. He was quite a good passer, and a lot of that sort of got taken out of his game. Now, he never blocks a shot. He doesn't really protect the rim ever. I don't really know what has happened here. Now, because they've re-signed these two other centers, do you think this is, again, more of this 25-minute situation for Carter? Do you think his minutes were kept down because of the injuries last season? Or have they, when we say make or break, is this like, hey, if you don't get it together, we'll move off of you and we've got these other guys who can step up?
Yeah, it's so a lot in there. I think a lot of last season was injury. And I think even Wendell Carter would admit that now. 4 games into the season, he goes up for a rebound against Utah Jazz, breaks his thumb or breaks one of his fingers on the rebound. He misses 25 games out of that. That's when the Magic went on their run. That's when they got established. And then Carter said after the season, he had surgery on his hand then. Carter said after the season that, he was so eager to get back into the lineup and be part of what the Magic were doing. He probably rushed his way back in, and you could just kind of tell he wasn't right the whole season long. His shooting around the rim. Yeah. So shooting around the rim went down, the thumb was still affecting him, and he had surgery. He had surgery on that hand again at the end of the season. So it's probably easy to kind of whisk away the season, because it was the worst season he's had since he got traded to Orlando. It's easy to whisk away the season as it was all the injury. He just was never right the entire time. Your hand is kind of important, even if it's your left hand. And he will be capable of bouncing back. But by the same token, we've also had now however many years of Wendell Carter. He's only played more than, I think, 60 games in one season of his career, or more than 57 games in one season of his career. So, you're kind of talking about the Goga Bitadze thing as if the Magic signed him to be a potential starter replacement. He's really just insurance. Mo Wagner's coming off the bench. He is the backup center. The Magic don't trust his defense enough to start him. Goga Bitadze steps in for the 15 games the Magic know Wendell Carter is going to miss. The reason why this is a make or break season for Wendell Carter is the Magic have essentially stamped 4 of their 5 starters for the next 3 years. Franz Wagner's starting a max contract next season. Paolo Banchero will sign his max extension next summer. Jalen Suggs is probably going to sign a new contract before the start of the season. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was just signed to a 3-year deal. Wendell Carter is the only starter that doesn't have a very long-term future and has all these questions surrounding him. He's got 2 years left on his deal, including this upcoming season. There is a lot, like you said, Wendell Carter is not a shot blocker. He can block shots, but he is not an above, I would like to call him an above the rim protector. That he is not that. He is a position defender. He's going to stand in the way. He's going to kind of push you off your spot and be able to challenge shots, but he's not trying to block shots. So if you're looking for a guy that's going to block shots, that's not him. He's not even the guy that gets rebounds. He's kind of the guy that boxes out so everyone else can get rebounds. And the Magic are very much a gang rebounding team. They want everybody to rebound. And they ranked well last year in defensive rebound rate, but rebounding is still definitely a bit of a weakness for this team and something that people do point at as something the Magic need to improve. Wendell Carter's got to improve all of that. He's got to show that he can be a good paint protector, if not a rim protector, be a good rebounder, still make those 3-pointers that make him valuable, be kind of a hub a little bit at the elbow at times. He's got a lot on him, and all of it starts with him being healthy. Quite frankly, like, it's hard to plan your team, especially when you're trying to be a championship level team, which is what the Magic hope to grow into here in the next couple of years, if your starting center is going to miss 20 games a year guaranteed. And that's really, I think, the debate with Wendell Carter and where the Magic are trying to figure out what they have in him still.
Yeah, it is an interesting season for him because it has been like there's always little signs, but they need more consistency, they need more security, they need more reliability, and we'll see whether he is able to bring that to the team this season. My burning question for this team, Phil, is regarding the man that we've referenced a couple of times here, receiving that max contract extension. We're talking about Franz Wagner, because what happened to the guy? Like, he just couldn't shoot last season. It just disappeared. And as the season went on, not only was the 3-point shot not going in, he just stopped taking them. Like, it's not like we haven't seen him be a solid shooter, but he shot like under 30% from 3 last season. And I really like him as a player. I understand the value of that contract, but at some point we have to sort of figure out, like, can he shoot? Like, is he going to be able to do that? Or was that like a 1 season 36% guy and he's a 33, 34 guy, and then it means he needs the ball in his hands for more driving, and then how does that all coexist? So, like, well, I'm not questioning the contract here, but
yeah,
what happened? What happened with that shooting? Like, where'd it go?
I wish I had an answer. It confounds everybody. Like, how Franz Wagner was such a solid shooter in his first 2 years in the NBA, is a really good free throw shooter, which is usually the sign that you can be a good 3-point shooter. And then last year, it just completely disappeared. And there would be maybe a stretch of 2 or 3 games where he would make his threes and it'd be like, okay, he's finally got it back. There's conjecture that maybe he was just tired. He played the FIBA World Cup last year, which ended very, very late in the summer.
Yep.
He had maybe 2 weeks before training camp. He comes to training camp, and he didn't shoot particularly well in the FIBA World Cup either, by the way, but he comes back and just never gets a shot right. He sprained his ankle and it was like, oh, that stinks. Franz doesn't ever really get hurt. Sprained ankle, sits out a couple of weeks. This will give him the rest that he needs. He'll be back, makes threes for like 2-3 games after that, and then dips right back down. It was nobody could understand it. Some people think there might be some issue with his shot. He's a very kind of chinny release with his shot. Like, he starts the ball low and brings it up high with his shot. And it's very kind of noticeable. It's a different shot form than maybe what people are used to seeing. Nobody knows. And obviously, like, he played well in the Olympics. Like, he was really, really good. He was second team all Olympics. He still shot 7 for 35, 20% from 3 in the Olympics. He had some good looks. He had some big shots. He made a big shot at the end of the France semifinal game. But nobody can really put their finger on it. So I hate to always say it's something mental, because, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it might be something mental. It might be something where he's just got to kind of get over it and kind of find it again. And I agree with you. Last year, toward the end of the season, it started looking like he was passing up threes. And that's the one thing that can't happen. You'd rather your star player miss the threes than not take them, because not taking them means the defense can't ignore you completely. At least you got to be a nominal threat. And so Franz's shooting is probably what's going to be the difference between him being an all-star and being just a really nice player. And obviously the Magic need him to be an all-star.
Yeah, now I'm going to put up on the screen for those watching on video his 3-point percentage per game last season. And like you in the middle of that graph, you can see there's those games he missed, and then he had that little spike, as you said. But somehow the second half of the season was even worse than the beginning of the season. He was like hovering at like 20% for like 10, 20, 25 games towards the end of the year. And he basically barely shot above league average in the second half of the season, maybe 5 or 6 games. It was really like, again, not something that I think is the likelihood to continue to happen all the way through, but it was jarring. And he shot 36% the first 2 years. So I think in a fantasy point of view, people look at this and go, man, I can't trust Franz, he can't shoot. And I also say, well, we've also got to have a memory that lasts more than 1 season and see that he shot 36 for 2 years. Maybe it's broken. I don't know. But we have also seen it work more than we've seen it not work.
But to that point, though, like from a fantasy perspective, he still shoots a relatively efficient field goal percentage. Like the 3-point shooting has been bad, but he is elite at finishing at the rim. He is elite at getting to the basket. And, you know, I will tell you just from watching his game at the Olympics, he got better at that. Like he is better at absorbing contact. I think he can get to the foul line a lot more this year than he did last year. And that was something that really spiked up. Like, you know, everyone's like saying Franz Wagner had this like awful, terrible year. And I'm just like, if you take out his 3-point shooting, which I get is important, every single one of his numbers was up last year. He scored more points than ever before. He shot better. You know, he shot about the same, even with this 3-point shooting dragging him down. He shot better. His rebounding was up. His assists were up. Like every other element of his game was up. He just couldn't hit a 3 to save his life.
Yep, exactly. Now it's time for us to look at your bold prediction for this season, Phil, as we get change of expectations. This time last year, we were talking about, the Magic could be taking some steps forward. We sort of saw some of this coming. But now your bold prediction is that they are going to escape the bottom 10 in offensive rating. Now, that is not a high bar to leap from, but that's where they've been, man. Like they've been bad. What is the one thing that needs to happen for that to happen?
Most people would say their 3-point shooting needs to improve. I would say it's turnovers. If the Magic can reduce their turnovers, I think they were bottom 5 in the league in turnover rate last year. They turned the ball over a lot. Their defense is predicated on forcing turnovers, so they got a lot of those back. But reducing turnovers is their key to being a better offense. Just again, it makes sense. Get more shot opportunities, don't give away possessions, and you'll have an opportunity to score more points. It's not rocket science all the time. This is a young team. They were prone to turnovers. They were prone to mistakes last year. I think they were the 4th youngest team in the league last year by average age. Another year being better, another year playing together should make them a little bit better at that. Again, like Paolo Banchero reducing his turnovers, Jalen Suggs continuing to reduce his turnovers. That's going to help this team go a long way to getting more shot opportunities, scoring more points, and finally ending that streak of being being in the bottom 10 in offensive rating, a place that they've been since they traded Dwight Howard.
It's going to be interesting to watch because that does appear to be the big key now, Phil, in terms of predicting a record for this squad. You've gone with 45 wins, 37 losses, of course, to get us to 82 games. Is that enough to keep them out of the play-in?
I think it should be. I think it should be. Now, look, I believe that spots probably 2 through 7 are going to be decided by about 2 or 3 games. So I think we will see something very similar to what we saw at the end of last season, where that last game 82 of the season, the Magic win, they're the 4 or 5 seed. The Magic lose, they're the 7 seed. Like that's how it was when they played the Bucks last year in game 82. I'm expecting another really competitive game, another competitive Eastern Conference standings that will be decided on the last day of the season. So I've been trying to tell people you can't totally define success by results this season, just because I think the margins are going to be so tight. Like I said, I think this team is a better team now, but I have them with a worse record than they did last year. I do think that they will stay out of the play-in tournament. I think they're one of the 6 best teams in the Eastern Conference, but like I said, those margins are really, really tight, and it could come down to, Franz Wagner missed a week and a half here, or Paolo missed this week here, and they went 1-3 instead of 2-2. That could be the difference between play-in and home court advantage, really. It
could. Now, finally, Phil, time to quiz you. This is really, really straightforward stuff. There's actually not even a correct answer because we head into the 24-25 season. So all I want to know from you is that there have been 14 players in Orlando Magic history who have worn number 24 or number 25. Who's the first guy that comes to mind?
Nick Anderson, number 25.
Nick Anderson was the first number 25 for this team. Correct.
Yeah. First draft pick for the team. Should be the last player to wear. He won't be the last player, but his number 25 should be hanging in the rafters at some point this year.
So they have not retired a number outside of Shaq's. Would you say that?
Just Shaq and the fans, number 6.
Do you think? Who do you think would be next? Would it be Anderson?
I personally, and Shaq even said this at his jersey retirement ceremony, Nick Anderson should always be first. Whenever the Magic do anything to honor their players, Nick Anderson is the original Magic player. He spent 10 years here. He's still a community ambassador. He's still with the team. He should absolutely be the next number retired. Wouldn't surprise me if with his passing that they hang some commemoration for Pat Williams in the rafters too. They retire a ping pong ball for Pat Williams. But when the Magic started their Orlando Magic Hall of Fame, which was the forerunner to starting retiring jerseys, they put Pat Williams and Nick Anderson as the first 2 members of their Hall of Fame. Like Nick Anderson, for non-Magic fans, makes no sense that we would honor him after what happened in a game that we don't speak about here in Orlando. But Nick Anderson is vitally important to this franchise, and I think number 25 will be the next number hung in the Kia Center rafters.
Who wore number 25 last year? Do you know?
Admiral Schofield.
He did. Vibes legend Admiral Schofield. The
Uncle Snow.
Is that what you called him? There's got to be some sort
Uncle Snow.
There's got to be some sort of like naval-based nickname here. I don't know. Like, I can't even think of a funny name. There's something funny. There has to be something funny with the.
You do the hire Met Your Mother joke, Admiral Schofield.
What was that? What was that one?
You do the salute. You salute Admiral Schofield.
Oh yeah, they could do that one, but there's got to be something about like. Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say I'll workshop it, but the bloke's not even in the league anymore. He was a number 25. Weza Wundu, he was there. Chris Duhon.
Weza Wundu.
Wore 25.
Chris Gatling.
Oh, yeah, Chris Gatling. What about 24 is a more of a wasteland. Anyone who wore 24?
Yeah.
That's a bad list, man.
Brooks Thompson was 22. 24.
There's only one player. There's only 2 players on that who played more than 1 season on the team, and there's only 2 people who have worn 24 in the last 24 years. Yeah. It's not no. I'm sure you're going to say it and I'm going to hit myself for not thinking of it. Cause like Gart Hammock was 44, I think, 24. Brian Evans wore 34 and they made him switch to 11 because they didn't want someone to have the same number as Shaq. Oh, wow. That was a thing. Like there's a lot of bad blood those early years without Shaq. Number 24, the one who's like the most memorable there, I guess, is Kem Birch, who was number 24. Oh yeah, for those Kem, 3 seasons. But the last person to wear 24 was BJ Johnson. I don't know how many games he played, like 3 maybe. How many games did he actually play? Yeah, he didn't play very much. 10 games. Yeah, 80 minutes. 80 minutes for BJ. A lot of the end of that season I completely blocked out because there's nothing memorable about it. He played 14 games. Sorry, my bad. He because he came back for a second go around. Yeah, but that's the COVID shortened season. He played 10 games in, and that is ending our season or ending our show here, Phil. Thank you for coming on, chatting about the Magic, which should be a fun team again this season. What's going on over at Locked On Magic? Yeah, not a whole lot. We're starting to get ready for the season. We'll probably be doing some position breakdowns. So I'm going to probably do an episode here in the next couple days, if not published already, on position battles to watch out for training camp. We're looking ahead to the season. Schedule's coming out. It's coming fast. It's going to be here before we know it. It is coming up, and Phil's going to have it all covered for you over on Locked On Magic. And as they say, Phil, abracadabra, alakazam, razzmatazz. I will see you next time. Thank you again for coming on. Thank you. And that is it for the Orlando Magic season preview. I'm sure you're all singing along at home or in the car, wherever you are. And what you can also do is you can hit the thumbs up, you can hit the subscribe, and you can double bang. That would be great. This team is going to be interesting. I'm excited. A lot of the fantasy values on these guys, it requires a lot of nuance, and the way that we approach some of these players in terms of their valuations is often different to what may be thrown out there in the general consensus, I think, for Magic players. I'm excited to see where it all goes for them, and I'm excited to say that is the end of the show. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.